We now have an updated look of the XRP price chart, ladies and gents. I want to cover a lot of topics in this video. The price action is obviously only one. However, based on today's revised perspective of the price chart and the market as a whole, price movement is generally following our expectations for the weekend, particularly in the run-up to FOMC week. The key point about XRP at this point is that we might still be able to produce a higher low. However, we did lose the trend line at this point, which is a strong indication that the price action may be much lower and that XRP may be bearish. Now that we have that in mind, what would we like to see today? In the end, we would like to see roughly 2.02 held on the 4-hour and 24-hour spans. Our wavering around support from the first and the second is the key issue we are examining here. This would also be approximately 2.02. In the end, though, I would want to see us stick to this $2 target, which has served as significant support thus far since going all the way back to 2024. As a result, we are just barely hanging on to one of the highest support levels. In a technical sense, this is our lifeline on XRP. As previously said, we might still produce a higher or lower trend line because, once more, trend lines. They are not the end of the world. The primary question we are examining is whether we are setting up a higher low scenario by constructing a floor. And Stephanie, but in order to determine whether or not this will be our higher low, we must observe a significant reaction in the price chart over the shorter time frame. I'm watching this all day. When we do have some additional pricing information, I'll update you all in subsequent videos. However, given the increased volatility leading up to the FOMC, we could expect to see some quite significant swings on the chart next week. Aside from that, tokenization is of course the main issue I want to truly solve. We are aware from all of the major players that tokenization is still a hot topic. Referring back to the XRP ledger, 47 assets have already been tokenized. Additionally, we've noticed a notable increase in the number of stablecoin holders in the network compared to RWA holders. Over the course of 30 days, we were able to observe that growth. Given the number of holders that existed before some of these upgrades were introduced, this is obviously overstated. We saw that the number of active addresses and other related information was beginning to increase significantly. This is due to the fact that it is only now beginning to be heavily monitored. This is the reason we are witnessing a gain of approximately 361,000%. However, that's just because the list now includes the more recent holders. Nevertheless, if we consider the entire value of XRP on the chain, in terms of tokenized value, it comes to just over $350 million. It is slightly more than $620 million if stablecoins are taken into account. But this is only the start. This is only the beginning. And when it comes to tokenization, I have been saying it a lot. But when we consider the whole value associated with these public networks, how can we not argue that this is only the beginning? A little less than $20 billion. I find it kind of odd that Kintan Network has such a huge amount of value associated with it, even when we consider all of the worth. It is approximately $440 billion. This is due to the fact that this network is private. It may or may not be on this list, but I believe it is. Yes, it is, correct? Thus, Kintan is responsible for more than $372.6 billion. That's just because it has a private value associated with Kintan. Therefore, even if we total up all of that value, it is still less than $1 trillion, even though the method they track the value on-chain is a little incorrect. For tokenized value on-chain, we haven't even begun to explore $1 trillion. We are therefore still in the early stages of this when we consider it, and consider where we are at the moment. More recently, Ripple published a piece outlining the potential to profit from a forecasted $16 trillion tokenized economy. We discussed this back around the second. Institutions require more than just storage. They require fortitude. The fact that Ripple has been collaborating with regulators since its founding and is fully compliant with the standards required to have an infrastructure built around these institutional players accessing tokenized assets and tokenization, in general, is what they were primarily examining and concentrating on. Therefore, Ripple's readiness for this moment was the only reason for the complete meltdown. And if we go back to the report from April of this year, when the Boston Consulting Group and Ripple were getting close to the tipping points for tokenization, we are investigating this, correct? In essence, they provided us with an understanding of our existing position regarding the tokenization of each and every asset. This system is about to undergo a reinvention. Financial assets are evolving from static instruments to dynamic software as a result of the shift to a tokenized economy. The global financial system is not enhanced or covered by tokenization. The infrastructure layer on which financial institutions have long relied is being redesigned. The promise is an all-on, instantaneous, programmable, interoperable, and widely available financial system. Indeed, a whole new financial system is beginning to take shape here, and XRP and Ripple are unquestionably essential components of this new framework. Many have said that XRP and Ripple represent the next financial system. They are undoubtedly a part of it, but that is a rather general statement, in my opinion. The easiest way for me to interpret this is that XRP and the XRPL are key components and key actors in this new financial system, and Ripple is a blockchain-based business. However, the future is multi-chain. Hedera, Stellar, Ripple, and a host of other players will all be involved in this. However, the compliance aspect and the players who are following standards, of which Ripple is already present, are what primarily distinguish the big players from the smaller ones. This fundamental infrastructure is already being constructed. Therefore, if we consider this to be a multi-chain future, then the answer is yes. Nonetheless, some winners will be significantly bigger than others. However, each of these networks is successful in this market. They are utility-based projects and at least concentrated on this. Here, we do have the potential for exponential growth. Over time, there have been fluctuations in the tokenized asset market. These assets were initially thought to be just one type of digital currency. However, momentum was slowed in 2022 with the failure of several prominent blockchain initiatives. The market value has had a double-digit CAGR since early 2023. Depending on the asset class, tokenization is developing at varying rates. Fastest when it produces actual efficiencies and when circumstances permit the emergence of secondary markets. Now, the main growth here is really the result of institutional players coming up, seeing the value, and drawing in more issuers and investors. Subsequently, we witness the emergence of simply tokenizing essential items such as commodities, gold, oil, and agricultural supplies. And that's kind of where we are already. However, the growth rate is the primary focus of this analysis, and it is quite important. And the advantages associated with tokenization are the reason behind this. The SEC chair did, however, recently issue a comprehensive statement regarding tokenization. Actually, this is arguably one of the most optimistic remarks I've ever heard from a regulator or other significant figure in this industry. This is from Coinboar. Within 2 years, all U.S. markets will be connected, according to SEC Chair Paul Atkins. Pay close attention to this. It's insane. Tokenization is the process of representing, for example, fundamental security through the use of smart contracts or tokens on a chain. I hope you all like this video. If you would like more free articles, please subscribe and turn on the notifications. There's more than just joining the free Discord described below and following me on Twitter. Having said that, thank you all for viewing. Rest in peace.